Mm. All right, nice. And we're off. So, what are we gonna talk about today? Hey, does anyone have anything they want to bring up? I have a few things, I think.
Not really. I mean, I think we have a general idea what we want to do, but maybe we can get a little bit more concrete towards the next steps. Maybe the biggest pain points that we want to tackle first, and then can already get started with some work.
Okay, maybe we can focus on JSON schemas and our specification and vote for extending of group of maintainers to speed up issues resolving, for example.
So I don't think everyone has the context of what you're referring to, Pavel.
Okay, I'm ready to drop a link to issue in chat. Okay, so right now we have a critical issue, which right now is blocking our Studio, Visual Code extension, and JetBrains plugin, and it's related to typos in our schema. So after introducing of schema format and the bindings in our schema, users can't validate their schemas in their specifications in our tools. And the main problem is it's time. So this issue appeared at 8th of March, and today is 26th of March, and it's strange. It's totally stuck. So I propose maybe to decide what to do with this situation, and maybe we can vote and extend current team, add more maintainers to decrease time which we need to solve issues like this, because it's our core part, and it's really strange that it's not working properly for now.
Yeah, it is a. Yeah, I see it. So I think the only problem is we don't have any of the maintainers as part of the group right now, which means that it's kind of like we can make suggestions all we want, but we can't make any decisions. We can only urge for changes to happen. And I also see that Sergio is pretty active in the PR, so I don't think there's that much more we can push there.
Yeah, but Sergey is only one who reviewed proposed changes, and I think that we need more reviewers in our core part right now, because it's really a strange situation to publish broken schema, JSON schema to schema store and distribute it through our solutions. And I think that it will be great that every maintainer of bindings or tools will be involved in JSON schema repo and will review definitions, and also as will bring issues from their repos, maybe edge case scenarios, for example.
Yeah, I agree. It would be probably a good idea. Have you created an issue for it or a suggestion for them?
Up to you. I don't know how to do it correctly right now. Anyway, I'm ready to help, and I'm ready to bring about 900 of tests from JSON API bindings to add to our JSON schema repository to check each definition in big set of real examples.
Yeah, so I would definitely reach out to the code owners, either ping them on Slack, or I know you also sent something, but since I'm not a code owner, there's nothing I can do for sure, other than take a look at it, what makes sense and what doesn't. What was I thinking? Is there anything that you're stuck with that you need help with in order to solve it, or does it just need review?
Well, I think you can review last comment with refactored any schema and multi-format schema definitions. And maybe help me with issue. Because I don't know which issue I need to create for mass reviewing of our definitions and for refactoring. Because it's our root schema is broken, and right now it's really hard to write proper restrictions to choose generic variant of payload, because our schema allows additional properties, and it's totally breaks any JSON schema validator, HGV or any else.
Right. So there's a problem. You have a problem with the additional properties, except there is a huge underlying, like, it's not something that you can easily disable, I don't think.
Yep, I've tried, but it totally blowed up.
How about do you mind pinging me in the PR with the exact and I'll have a look regarding the current problems that you're facing.
Well, right now I propose temporal solution, which works in HGV in our tests. Also, it works at JetBrains IDEA. I need time to check it in our studio and Visual Code extension. I hope that the behavior will be same without any crappy behavior.
Yeah, see, you did a lot of change. Okay. Yeah, let's grab it. Let's take it after, maybe, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
I wanted to bring up I wanted to set up the final. Does anyone have any comments regarding the working group or anything that needs to change before before asking TSC to vote on whether to create the working group or not?
Maybe I was just thinking, should we maybe define what is essential a little bit more? I mean, I think it's okay to keep it somewhat general, to have the freedom to pick whatever we think is like has high priority at the moment, but maybe still have some framework or some guidelines to what is essential and what is maybe not falling into this category.
You mean kind of the scope of the scope of the working group and so, yeah, it's a good point. What's your guys' scope?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I think more about like the programming language side of things, but yeah, Pavel also brought up good good points that, for example, this JSON schema is also like essential. It's the core of it. So this is also why I want to like maybe clarify a little bit more. Yeah, what we think is essential. What is the topic of the working group?
I think that it's chain JSON schema. After that, our low-level bindings for each language, and on top of that, any other solution like CLIs, frameworks. But JSON schema is our fundament right now, and it's a little bit broken.
I definitely also agree with the JSON schema is definitely part of the core of JSON or core of the tooling set. I don't agree that CLI, etc., is part of it. At least not in the sense that that I had envisioned. For me, it's that we have parsers in a bunch of languages, and I don't want to specify which. Like we have a group of people that want to do specific languages, so that's a perfect start. But if someone want to join in and do a complete, like a new one, they should definitely be able to do that as well. So yeah, parsers, and of course, whatever parsers comes with is to me the most essential. So you can interact with async API documents in any language. That's the essential for me, if I had to define it in a rough sense right now, and what to focus on. And that encompasses JSON schema or the spec JSON schema repo as well, of course, because that's our validation. That's across languages.
How is it? How does, for example, JSON schema affect the parsing in the languages? Because the validation, you could also kind of implement your own validation with the language types. So if you have a strong typing system, let's say in Rust or Java, Kotlin, that you also like implement the schema yourself. So how are we using it in other languages?
We need single point of trust. The main problem is next. You can implement our specification without JSON schema, but unfortunately you can make some typos. And if you prefer to generate schema from your implementation, it can be totally different to our canon realization. And that's why we need JSON schema. It's a single point of trust for all implementations of realizations in different languages.
Okay, fair point. Yeah, I always just check the documentation side and
we still have typos in our website with specification, and the better way is to open JSON schema and work on top of it.
Yeah,
Don't rely on the site.
Yeah, I agree, for sure. You kind of need some kind of chain of trust in all of these implementations. If we do too much, sorry, go Pavel.
Sorry, one more. Also, we will use JSON schema in schema registries, like Confluent, for example, or maybe on top of Kafka, or on top of other solutions, because all of them are relying on JSON schema. That's extra plus to focus on JSON schema and fix it.
I don't think I fully understand that point.
I mean that, for example, Kafka or Confluent or other on-top solutions on RabbitMQ don't rely on implementation on on any language, they are working with JSON schemas. And if we can't provide correct JSON schema, our users will not be able to validate incoming or outgoing messages from brokers or maybe some kind of event gateways, for example.
Pavel, are you talking about integrations or that you can parse, for example, remote async API documents from schema registries? Is that what you mean or something else?
Yep. I mean, yep. I can take async API, apply it to Kafka, and be be sure that any incoming or outgoing message is valid across our across my specification.
So would it make sense that we start? I kind of want to dig into. So as far as I can see, we kind of agree on the parsing side that binds everything together. Of course, we have the underlying JSON schema documents as well. Would it make sense that we agree, or at least for the pull request regarding the working group, that we finish that conversation and then take the conversation about what features we see in parsers as being necessary or like what they need to solve? So we can start ranking those features and like what to focus on. Does that make sense?
Okay, let's try.
Is it perhaps easier to try and define what we think is not in scope rather than trying to define what is? Like you said, do you think
We can do
CLI is
both.
not in scope?
Oh yeah, true.
It feels like that's a good way to put like a boundary on it.
I wouldn't mind that we can do an initial scope and we can change the scope down the road once we achieve like a certain level of consistency. So for example, the description of the working group is not specifically static, but it is what we're currently focusing on, for example, like right now. What's the vision? What's the focus area right now? Because it can be a lot of things. So yeah. I don't know if that makes sense. I would suggest that we just stick with, right now, just stick with parsers. Parsers and the features therein. Whatever we say that parsers should support.
So there's a something that I think we want to get in on the ground of is, and this is kind of specific to .NET, but the timing just ends up being right, is that currently in .NET there's no one Microsoft provided framework for consuming events. So there's like a bunch of different libraries, and Alex and I were kind of thinking, how do we integrate with all these different libraries? And Microsoft's just come out and said they're going to create this one mega sort of abstraction on top of all that. So it's kind of the perfect time to build a document generator that hooks in with that. I guess I'm thinking like when you spin up an API, it spits out the open API document. We want to make sure that as soon as they release this, when you spin up an event-driven API, it spits out the async API document. Just in terms of adoption, it feels like that really helped the open API stuff in the Microsoft ecosystem, at least. So I wouldn't want to keep. Just based on the timing, it seems like it's a good time to be involved.
So are you suggesting that we include documentation generation as part of that core tooling set or essential building blocks?
Yeah, at least for now.
All right, so I think that there's a lot of tools that we kind of see as need to have, but we kind of need to prioritize them in some sense. What's the first step in order to create the rest of the tools, for example? We can also do a brainstorm if you guys want, where we only focus on writing down all of the essential tools, and then we can look at them and prioritize them based on that, basically. How does that sound?
We can do that. I mean, for me also the question is what is missing from the parsers? Because like from my point of view, we have them in Java, Kotlin, .NET. So you're always able to basically provide some JSON document and pass it into a language model. So for me, it's a question what is missing in this regard.
That's good. It's a good point. I don't think it changes the. No, it's a good point. I also think that some of the core tooling that we're gonna suggest either is already there, or is missing some kind of feature, or which is completely fine because we can adapt those tools as well and make suggestions to them. So it's only a question about how do we get started and where to start. Because right now we have a bunch of ideas regarding what's essential building blocks, for example. We have a bunch of ideas regarding, for example, what parsers needs, what features we want to see, and some are even missing features or missing, what's it called? Might even be some kind of bugs that needs to be fixed. So the question is, how do we move forward regarding all these ideas? How can we unify them behind a single working group? That can change over time as well.
At least we can create common test suite. It will be language independent.
So you mean like a description of what it is?
It can be a collection of different specifications with different real stage scenarios, parameters, and extension fields, and looks like it will be great to run all of our tools across those specifications.
So you mean kind of like a list of examples that we can use for testing across tools?
Yep, that all of them were implemented correctly.
It's a good suggestion, at least for the implementation wise and testing. But it doesn't answer how we move forward regarding creating this vision behind the working group. So how do we do that? So basically what we need to come up with is, when can we, that pull request that I sent in the chat, when can we ping the TSC members regarding the creation of that official working group behind that description that we set? But the question is, can we set the description before we dig into what the essential building blocks is? Because right now it's a very vague description, as you also pointed out, Lorenz, and that was kind of on purpose. since we don't have that vision yet, and it's it might take a few sessions before we really get down to like to something that concrete. So I guess the question is, I'm not sure if you have any comments regarding.
For me, it's clear. It's a good description. For me, it's like ordinary core team in any enterprise, which is focusing on to provide core tools for anybody outside your team. And I'm totally agree with description. And it's, for me, strange to restrict us with enumerated tools or projects. It's all about a common part for internal or external users.
I think we
Trying
have
to keep the description then, but it's more just around making sure we're focused on something moving forward.
yes, that is the most
So rather than
important.
restricting us, just making sure we are actually working on something common.
Yes. The reason why I really want this working group set up correctly is because that enables us to create these GitHub projects, that enables us to create these more fundamental resources that we need in order to work better together. That's kind of why I'm pushing for that we get an agreement on the pull request, because then it's going to take a few weeks or some time before TSC members are even approved. So yeah, that's why I'm pushing for it. So if
Do you think it's too broad for TSC members to approve as it is, or do you like, what's your feeling on it?
I don't think it is too broad, no. If it is, they will definitely let us know. And then we can, and at that point, we probably already have an idea about the description even better. So we can finalize it even more if need be. But I have a feeling it's not necessary. Might be. We can also change it after the fact. So yeah.
Maybe we can enumerate projects in which we are interested right now.
That we can what? Sorry?
Maybe it's will be good to enumerate projects or tools in which we are interested right now. So we as core team thinking that next tools are in our area of interests. And we propose to our community to provide us a chance to focus and evolve in right manner for us, for example. It will be much better than just description.
Yes, that is true. And that's a good counter argument. Lorenz, what's your take on the description based on what we just discussed?
I'm completely fine with it. I think I already improved, even though my approval probably doesn't count, but
it's good to. I would love that all of you like approve the pull request, because that just means that I can make it on draft, basically. Just that at least we are in agreement. And I'm gonna ping. I think Alex approved as well, right? So it's or did he?
I think he requested again after the change.
Yeah. And I'm gonna ping Suvik as well, so he takes a look. All right, so moving on. Let's talk. Does anyone have anything they want to talk about now? Otherwise, I can just keep going, I think. Well, so how about we start with a little brainstorm regarding essential building blocks and do a very, very rough. So we do the brainstorm regarding building blocks. Like we just list all the tools that we find necessary as essential building blocks. And then after that, we do a priority list. What to focus on first, what to go next, and then deep dive maybe even more into what is each of those tools need. How does that sound? Good. All right.
Yeah.
I have no idea whether we can use this. So let's see whether this works. Does any of you see? You do, right? Can you all of you use it? Like write in it?
How would I write?
Try and grab the. I don't know. Do you see the text on the left side of the screen, like a pen and paper, or do I need to do? Your
I
viewer.
don't see any sort of tools.
Wait, let me see if I can change the. How do I change the settings on this? I love it isn't. Yeah, because right now it just says that you're all viewers. Presentation, they say. Well, I was hoping it would be easy. I guess it's not. Okay, whatever. Tell me what to write, and I'll write it. I think that's the way we have to do it right now. I can play around with it later to see if we can use it next time. All right, essential building blocks. Give me something.
Parser, serializer.
Parser? When you say serializer, what do you mean?
Basically the other way around. Getting JSON into memory and from memory into JSON.
So basically load and on, what's it called? Load, unload the async API documents?
Yeah.
Because it could also be serialized into YAML or whatever, right?
Yes. So I think if you are working with a language and generating sub-documents from a language into a document, I think most tools use JSON, not YAML. I think YAML is mostly for if some developer wants to write it themselves.
Yep. All right. Next.
A reference and the reference.
I guess you mean reference, like handling references. Reference
Yep, handle internal or external references also as the reference them into one compose schema. No, specific.
Yeah. What else? Did you say another one?
Oh, just reference the reference.
Okay.
Vice versa.
Michael?
Yeah, I think document generator from code.
So that's output. Are we talking anything specific or just documentation generation?
Well,
Rendering
generating the, assuming we have a parser, which means we have a representation in each language, then you should be able to essentially introspect some code and generate those types. Then you would use the load unload to actually produce the document.
But when you say documentation generation, do you mean like visually, for example, Studio, like how it renders the async API document, or is it something else?
No, more generating like generating the async API document from your code.
So code first tools.
Yeah.
Maybe just code scanning. I mean, I only know for Java it works like scanning. Maybe there's also some other languages that would use metaprogramming.
I think we can maybe group it under code first tools because it's like
code analyzer.
You can do analyzing. I guess the difference is either you analyze existing code or you annotate code to match, like to describe an async API document, right? Is that the difference?
I guess analyzer has a different meaning at least in .NET land. That would be more about like, for example, you could have an analyzer that would make sure that the parser types actually match the JSON schema. But
I don't think I follow 100%.
I think it just.
I don't think it's important.
Yeah, it's not. We know what you mean.
Yeah. And I guess the JSON schema is the kind of core underneath all this.
Anything else?
I mean, it's also essential to have some integration with the frameworks, but I'm not sure if this can actually be in the scope of this group because it probably depends heavily on the tool itself, what you're building. So if you're building something that scans your code, you probably have to have the bridge in this tool to integrate it with the framework, but we can, just write it down.
Let's just write it down. It's just the brainstorming. Anything else?
Maybe linters and validation tools.
So beyond just validating with JSON schema.
Yep, something like stoplight, maybe support the definitions.
If I write governance, does that ring a bell for everyone?
Not
or
really.
Okay, so design guide or design style validation. I don't know how to frame it. Because for example, Spectral, it's Spectral, right? Yeah.
At least we can check out the wrapper and ensure that they already have implemented our new version with Ray.
So basically, it's design guides for async API documents, being able to validate those. Basically, if you, for example, only want properties defined as with underscore, camel case, or whatever, parameters in a specific way, all of these things needs to be validated at some point. That's what, at least how I understood that one, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially the code first stuff can end up generating invalid documentation because people usually write in their languages like whatever style their language uses, which might not actually be valid async API doc. So
True.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else?
Schema registries, maybe.
I'm gonna call it schema registry integration. Can I call it
Yep.
with parser? Or
Mm.
with reference? Maybe this. Does it make sense? No or yes?
No.
That
At least we have API Curio schema registry, and I think it needs more attention from our side.
so it's schema registry in the terms of what?
In terms of storing of our specification and parts of our specification
Okay, so
to bootstrap speed of new specification implementations.
so like storing async API documents and all relevant schemas, components.
All parts of async API to build from a already prepared blocks.
Yeah. Anything else?
Looks like project generators or other tools for decreasing of boilerplate code.
Did you say code generators?
Yep. Or project generators like StarSpring.io. I can choose one or more async API specifications and generate already prepared project with required integrations, for example.
Right. Yeah. Next one. All right, so let's see. Let's take these, for example, and then let's try and do a kind of, I want to do something and then let me know whether it makes sense. So I kind of want to group a few things together here. And let me know whether it makes sense. How I wanted it to be that. So as far as I can see, we have schema registry and storing async API documents, etc. is kind of also related to reference tooling, but it's also kind of on its own. So I'm just going to leave it there. So as far as I see, we have, as part of the parser, we have load and unload async API documents. We have reference tooling. That is kind of its own separate like release tool. And then we have Spectral, which basically is how do we lint async API documents across languages and not just, for example, TypeScript that or JavaScript that Spectral is written for. If needs be. Does this grouping kind of make sense?
So what does reference mean here? Is it dealing with JSON references, or is it reference tooling?
Anytime that you see a reference in an async API document, how does tools handle that?
Okay.
I that's at least my definition of it. So given this, how would you prioritize it? What's most important right now? What's less? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 distinct tools. So that means let's try and rate them from 1 to 6. Does that make sense?
What does important mean? Because you can also kind of draw a dependency graph between them. So that everything that is like on the top of the dependencies is more important. What do you mean, like for us personally, how we use async API? Or
Which part?
if you say, okay, is parser more important than code first? It's hard to answer because it depends how you want to see it. If you see it as a dependency graph, then parser is more important because you can't have any code first tools without a parser. But from my point of view, so how I use it, async API, code first is the most important to me because I just use it as a documentation tool, and I'm not so concerned with the low level parser things like what other people use. For example, references, I never use them except like, for example, within the document, of course, but not.
Very good question.
Yeah.
So there's not a single right answer there either, because it is up to the use case. The way I think about it is that the parsers enable other platforms to integrate async API into their tools. So that means that you can have what's it called? Backstage. Backstage can load async API documents that is provided to it. It can be Gravity IO's platform in the terms of they can parse and load async API documents. You have Microx, for example, that needs to load and walk over, like iterate over the async API documents based on to mock different things and get examples. So in order to enable those tools to be built, you need parsers. For the end user, however, that wants to write async API documents, code first tools might be more important for the, how do you say it? If it's just an engineer, code first tools is probably the best choice instead of manually design first, for example, approaches. So at least within this working group, the enable others to build tools for async API is the, at least to me, the more present matter. At least that's how I theorize about that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thoughts, Pavel, Michael?
Yeah, I think I'm a bit the same, where I'm probably coming at it more from the code first. Like, of course, it relies on all this stuff underneath it, but it's not particularly where my interest lies. But it does seem like the working group should work across this, because if you have a code first tool that generates something that's going to be invalid in the ecosystem, then there's no real point. So all that base stuff does is really enable it, as you say. So I don't know if I don't know if us just deciding what we think is more important is the way to do it, but more looking at what's there and what's missing, or where particular pain points are. Going that way.
Yep. As I said before as well, it's even if we, for example, pick parsers, that doesn't mean that 2 months down the road, once we have those basic parser and their functionality, or let's say half a year, that we don't change over to, for example, enable code first tools as well, or something else. Or it can be in parallel as well if you really wanted. Maybe not, but that's a lot. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of finding what is most present, what is the most useful as well to us and to the community, and try and take a look at whether we want to solve those problems. So let's say that you have, all right, so I get that the prioritizing these are kind of hard. Can we do an initial grouping of priority? So for example, must have, should have.
I think it's almost better to do it as the dependency graph.
What's the
rather than-
dependency graph?
Well, like code first relies on having a model in the language, which relies on having a good JSON schema.
Right.
Because then you can kind of say everything points back to JSON schema, and then that becomes like the core.
True. That's one way to prioritize it. That's sure. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I also would agree with this way of thinking. If you want to prioritize in a common way, then making sure that the core works first, and then you can go from there a bit on top of it. But you always have to have a really strong core that is, yeah, as Pavel said, working, so that people can rely on it. That would make sense.
So what I'm hearing is basically, because most of the stuff starts with JSON schema, it's more, how do we determine that dependency graph? Because us saying it is one thing. For example, it's easy enough to say, okay, we have JSON schema first, then we have parser, then we can build code first tools, because now we have parsers to actually build or to interact with those documents. And then this one is a bit finicky because it's kind of parser related. It's kind of it's kind of part of this, but it's kind of not. I'm not sure where to place it.
I would say you have a dependency from schema registry to JSON schema. Like this is the only dependency I see there.
Yeah. It is an essential building block for you to, for example, let's say that, like, where do you store these documents? You have maybe a GitHub repository, or you have schema registry, or you have a third-party platform to place those async API documents and its components, right?
Or you have a service that is using code first and is serving
Yes.
the document.
True.
Those are the options.
Yeah.
can you use arrows there? I don't see what tools you have, because then it makes maybe more sense to see the
Right.
dependencies.
I can do
Okay, that works.
very, very skillful drawing. That's the best my mouse pad can do.
Looks good.
I think that's a good start. So yeah, we are out of time. I will probably propose that next meeting we deep dive into, okay, so what's needed for JSON schema, for example? What's needed for parsers, like to kind of get a more specific idea about what's needed task-wise as well, like what needs to be solved. At least how we see it. How does that sound?
Did you attach this schema to issue?
Huh?
Did you attach? Will you attach this schema to issue?
So you mean the issue that you're currently working on?
No, in our meeting issue, to build a schema and to write some notes, maybe link already implemented solutions in our repo.
I don't think I follow what you mean.
Will you write back to our meeting issue
Yeah.
this schema in this order? So, or maybe we can pack it into table.
I will for
And
sure write the recap. I'll write the recap what we discussed, also so the others can comment on it and see what we discussed, as well as the recording. And then for the next meeting, I'm gonna propose like that we discuss these more in detail. Is that what you meant?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I will for sure do that.
Can also do a screenshot if you're not embarrassed of your drawings.
I am gonna write it out in a comment.
Okay.
Probably. Oh well, actually, now that you say it, I might actually just do a picture. It's way easier. Okay, so let's end it here, folks. Thanks for joining, and next week already, next Tuesday. So yeah, thanks for joining, and see you next time.
Thank you. See you. Bye.
Bye.